The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome in. It's the Bill Clark Show, episode 10. Pat Smith, Landrum Roberts, Molly Robinson, along with Coach Bill Clark. And Coach, needless to say, another wild and wacky weekend of college football.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about today.
Sure do. And let's start with what happened with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Another very tough loss in a place where you have coached. You have been in Neyland Stadium in Knoxville.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions swirling around about the noise. I won't get into every one of those. I'm sure you guys have talked about that.
But just a few minutes.
Just a few minutes on it. It is extremely loud. There may be some speakers laying around somewhere, but it is extremely loud. And I think anytime you're trying to call plays, anytime now you've got helmet communications, obviously those are factors. But, came down to the end. We're going to talk about Alabama and kind of the things we think they can do better. Great game to watch, though.
Yeah, I think maybe the biggest disappointment for me in watching that game is it being a big game. You had already had some near scares if you're Alabama versus South Carolina. We know what happened versus Vanderbilt. In a short stretch, albeit, it was an Alabama team didn't seem like they were playing up to their level of expectation. I thought we would get that last Saturday in Neyland, and I was underwhelmed overall with what I saw. And not to take anything away from Tennessee, Coach, but it kind of hit flat for me with Alabama.
Yeah, I think first, I will say I thought defensively they started out better. I thought they had a good plan. We talked about Oklahoma, Arkansas, Florida starting to copy that blueprint from Oklahoma. I saw that. I thought they played better. I thought they tackled better. Now, give Tennessee in the second half, they made some credit. Nico started making some plays for those guys in the second half. Things we're going to talk about today, and I think, you're hearing this already out of Alabama. Sometimes it takes not just one loss, but two losses to talk about getting back to basics. Things from Milroe, if it was me, and I've coached that kind of quarterback before, not to take anything away from him, but you've got a guy who's a real runner. Thoughts on that for me instead of, and you see these, what we call full field reads. You're looking at 1, you're looking at 2, you're looking at 3, you're looking at 4, you're looking at 5 even. We should be looking at half field reads. If you go back to Alabama when they really struggled last year early on and they started running the ball better. So that's included. They got to run the ball better. And then take Milroe and say, all right, we're going to look at number 1 and we're going to look at number 2. If those aren't there, we're taking it down and running it. And I think that would cut down on some what looks like tiptoeing. I think because he's still looking for those other receivers. Is this Tom Brady or is this Milroe? It's just two different kind of quarterbacks. Cut the reads down, let them run the ball better. I think the other thing I've heard them talk about is discipline. Discipline, whether it's receivers acting like they're taking a jump shot. These are things that I cannot stand. Now, kids are still crazy. There's no doubt. But I think respect, fear, whatever that is, that's got to be brought back to that program. Sounds like that's things that's going on within them, and that's got to come out from the players. They've got to understand that is part of who we are, and that's how we win. That's how we win games, and that's what I totally believe in. Don't mean we can't have fun and love each other and all these other things, but it's going to take discipline, and I think that sounds like what they're trying to get back to, and then the defense has got to continue to improve.
I want to go back to Jalen Milroe because what you see from him, some people this week on our radio show, they've been asking us, hey, have you heard anything? Is he hurt?
Yeah.
Just the way that tentatively, he's not hitting the line like he usually was before the Tennessee game. His throws, they're talking about his footwork looks off. What are you seeing just by your eye, Coach? I know you're not at practice, but based on what you've seen in play with Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, great question. I think that's kind of what I'm saying here. When you've give him all these reads and you're a pass first, it's okay to throw the ball. And I talk about my thoughts have always been what can they not stop is what we've got to be able to do. But there's a point in there when you don't run the ball enough, you can't just jump into that and say we're going to run the ball. That's got to be a commitment. That sets up all these other throws, all these other play action throws. His running is tentative because if you watch him, he's looking to throw to the third, the fourth, the fifth receiver a lot of times. That makes him tentative. If we cut it down to, hey, you still run these other guys out, but I'm looking over here to the left side of the field, or I'm looking high to low or high to medium, that's not there. Then I aggressively run the ball I think if that happens, you're going to see a different guy, and I think that fits him. Not necessarily maybe what they like to do, but you've got to fit your quarterback and you've got to fit your players.
How much of this do you believe is a confidence thing with a guy like Jalen Milroe? Because there were some open throws, and it looked like he was second-guessing himself.
I think it is. I mean, my gosh, who gets scrutinized more than this guy? You're the quarterback at the University of Alabama. Every throw gets dissected by every expert in America. I mean, that's the world you're in. Now, that's part of it. That goes with it. I think we've got to give him, and I say we as if I'm coaching on that staff, but you got to give him less options where he can use what he's so good at, which is running the ball off the scramble. And this happened, we talked about LSU. Go back to Jay Daniels. You can go back and find this on film, and I've talked to other people about it. When he kind of early in the year, those receivers were hooking up. They started taking them and going, all right, if he takes off, you take off. Now that run opens up. That's the kind of little details that people don't always know that's what we're looking for.
All right, so let's talk about Auburn for a second, Coach. Unfortunately for the Tigers, they had a 10-point lead, double-digit lead once again in the second half in an SEC game. They come out with a loss. They're at Kentucky this week. What did you see in that game? More frustrations for Auburn, and what do they do moving forward trying to get that first SEC win?
Well, I always like to start with positives. I think they're not turning the ball over, so that's 2 weeks in a row. And you see what's happened with just that singular piece. They're in the game. They're leading the game. Now, they had a little break early on when the quarterback went down. There was no doubt that was a big help to him. And he came back. Give him credit. Give that team credit for staying in there. Things that I talked about, because you look at the defensive side, they had so many chances to keep this guy in the pocket. And this guy is that same, if you want to say he's a runner thrower, and you go in there and you run into linemen. You got this outside blitz, and you go in there and you let this guy get out of the pocket. Granted, we can always go back and find singular plays, but that's what it's going to come down to, who makes plays. We've got to hit chip shot field goals. You got to. You've got to be able to hit those field goals. I think we can go find somebody to hit those inside 40 kicks. That's what you got to find. You got to be able to make those things. And that's how you win those games that are close. And that's what they got to do is find a way to win those games.
I guess the inherent fear now that Auburn has lost 4 games by a combined 27 points, Coach, is do you have the mindset starting to set in? Even if you're up in a ball game, it becomes late in the fourth quarter. We saw it in Como. We saw it against Oklahoma at home earlier in the season. That fourth quarter is the mindset of, oh no, here we go again. Yeah. How are we going to lose this one this week?
Yeah, that's what you're fighting against. You're like, as a coach, psyche, mindset, they're getting bombarded with social media, questioning calls and questioning. You got to fight that. We could have a whole talk on let's go back to January, and I tweeted about that this week. Winning is a year-round proposition, and of course, I'm a training guy. I'm an old strength and speed guy and all those things because that's when we develop that. Now, I have not seen that in Auburn. I have not seen any looks like they're quitting or giving up. They seem to be fighting. In their mind, hey, we're close. So can they keep that going, though, as the negatives have happened week after week?
All right, so let me ask you this question because we had this question posed to us earlier this week as we were talking about the Auburn situation. At what point – the record that Auburn currently has, they're still trying to fight themselves up to get to a bowl game, but they're not going to be playing for an SEC or a college football playoff berth. Mm-hmm. At what point of the season, Coach, as a coach, do you start looking at your roster and you start looking at younger guys with the potential of, hey, I need to get these guys some playing time because I've got to turn the page. I got to start looking at 2025 as opposed to 2024. Where's the line of demarcation to cut that off?
I don't know if that world exists in today's game.
Okay.
I hate to say that, but I think everything is in those singular games, and especially when you've got Alabama sitting there at the end of the year, and they're so close. Now, if you were getting blown out, then I think you start looking for, hey, we got to get these guys. I think now, truly, and I tell that story of when the NIL started, and you started thinking, oh, wait a second, this is a year-to-year proposition of who's going to be on my team? Who do I go get? Who will I lose? So you just start going, man, it's week to week. It's game to game. Now, do we want to play a lot of people? Yes, that is so good for morale. I was laughing. Coach Vincent, I was talking to him the other day, and he said, you remember how many games were we up 38-0 at half? And you said, we're running the football and we're playing the young guys. And you start looking, man, you could beat these guys 50 and 60 and 70 points. What did that do? Plus, I knew we had to play those guys the next year.
Yeah.
So that's why you like winning those games and getting these guys in the game but you also want to play them. And I go back to Pete Carroll. All these guys that I used to talk to and look up to and listen to. Those young guys, they can play. It's just who is performing at practice, who gives you the best opportunity, and if there's any let up in technique or effort or whatever, then we start trying to get these other guys in.
And to be fair, in Auburn's case, Coach, out of necessity, they're already playing a lot of young guys. So how many more of those young guys could you actually feasibly bring along?
Yeah, I think that's always the question. You're nonstop looking at depth charts, rosters, and that's what I was always doing. Y'all two coaching for me, I'd say, hey, I want a synopsis of the game. So you got these plus and minus grades, but I wanted to hear what you said about the linebackers or the running backs. I want to hear, what does the depth chart look like? What's the mindset of your room? Because really that's your job as the position coach to control that mindset. My job as a head coach to help with it, but we're all controlling mindset. We're controlling expectations. We're communicating how much they're playing. So I always said one of the worst things I could do is go in there and promise somebody you're going to get 12 snaps, and then he gets 2.
Yeah.
So those are the things you're constantly doing because you're dealing with human beings. And there's a reason they're at this level because they want to win. They want to compete. They want to play. So you're always managing that. I've always said the more guys we can play, the better our morale is.
All right, Smart Bank, Coach, they bring us the smart call of the week. And I guess it was a smart call if you're a Texas fan as opposed to a Georgia fan. I want to take you back to the second half, the controversial pass interference call. It gets called, and then the fans go crazy. They throw stuff on the field. Refs get together. They decide, you know what? That wasn't a penalty. We're gonna overturn that. We're gonna change that up. So smart call of the week. I'm not really sure, but just your thoughts. And has anything like that ever happened to you as a head coach?
Never. I've never seen them reverse a call like that. Now, I have seen them go to replay, and I've had officials swear to me, we're going to the next play. We're going to the next play. I said, so I'm going to have to use a timeout when obviously we know the answer to this call. Thank God that replay happened. Any coach that's worth his salt wants just to be fair. He just wants to, because I may hate it, but at least I know it's fair for both sides. So it's not that call got changed. It's just you cannot go. You've made the decision. We've already changed it. And then all of a sudden you're going to come back 2 minutes later there's not a replay on that. So that now all of a sudden is not fair. And now we've also created this deal where, hey, if we complain and we throw things, we're going to get our way. So the call that they corrected to was the right call. I believe that. But you can't do it the way it happened. That would just have been one you missed. And then all of a sudden you've now created, if we throw things, we can get our way. So, now it sounds, they're getting punished.
Yeah.
And I think they're teaching them a lesson, which you have to, because that can't go on.
Would you ever get on the loudspeaker if they handed you a mic and asked the students if you had to calm down in that
whatever
environment?
You have to do. Yeah, because that is your responsibility. I mean, he knew they're going to get hammered. Later on, if you don't take control of it right now, it gets ugly, and it's all going to come back to you as the head coach. I mean, you're going to be fined. All these things that are going to happen that's going to be bad for your program, a little bit. So I think he handled it the right way. And you can't blame him for wanting the call to be changed, but you just can't change it at that point. Now, they could have huddled up before they marked it off, decided and said, I think that could have been fixed before it happened. But once you've made the decision, then to come back change it, no.
Looking at that particular play, did you agree with ultimately what they decided?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the correction was the right thing to do, but the way they did
it was just the manner in which they went to get to the end result.
You just can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't that the call, the reversal was right, but they let it happen. They waited 2 minutes, and then they changed it. No.
Something about UT fans in the SEC, right? And teams that wear orange.
Yeah, it's Texas and Tennessee.
Who was more impressive in their throwing of things? Was it the Tennessee students or the Texas students?
To me, it was the Tennessee because it was a small golf ball, and they really could have injured Lane Kiffin, but it just came close enough just to kind of get his attention. So that's...
You got to have a cannon.
You like how me and you bring it up. He ain't going to say anything.
I'm not commenting on that.
No, smart coach. All right, before we get done with this segment, I do want to ask you because it has started. It took a little bit longer than it has in the past, but the coaching carousel has begun. Southern Mississippi, East Carolina. Mm-hmm. You were on a radio show on Monday, and I just want to get your thoughts because last year we did a little homework on East Carolina. Man, I'm telling you, this program, what they pay, what they have in the pipeline, what they're going to be doing there, the fan base is
sleeping giant.
I mean, it's you competed against them for a long time. Just your thoughts about East Carolina, that job.
Well, I visited East Carolina in 1989 when Bill Lewis was there. What I've seen, great fans, good facilities, and now the question for East Carolina and other schools is, where are you in NIL? I think I saw something where the AD was addressing it. Sounds like they're getting a new indoor, which I think you almost have to have now to compete. So are they willing to be in the upper echelon of the American? It seems so. Great fan base, my gosh. Great place to live. There's a lot of football players around that area, so I think they've got every opportunity to compete. Now, you'd like to hear all the details, but sounds like they got a chance to do something special.
Well, and it's not like this program has been in the cellar forever. We can go back to whether it was Pat Dye, whether it was Steve Logan, Ruffin McNeil, Skip Holtz. They've had some names that have headed up that program. And you mentioned the fan support, and I can remember when they were here for the bowl game just a few years ago, how many ECU fans we saw around Birmingham.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've seen. I think the details will be where it's at, and sometimes leadership matters. Leadership matters to say, I know you've done it this way. Can we do it this way? Can you take this step? And sometimes people just need nudges to take them to the next step.
Smart Bank, Coach, you're very close to those gentlemen at Smart Bank and the rest of that fine team. Yeah,
the guys at Smart Bank are great. Obviously for me, it was just such a great move just personally to get over and deal with them. I'm on the advisory board. Small town bank feel, which is what we want, where we get quick answers but big time bank as far as the way they handle everything and the way they're able to take care of your needs.
Webb Concrete and Building Materials, building blocks to victory. And this is a big one down in College Station, Coach. Biggest game of the SEC so far. And it's LSU taking on Texas A&M. The Aggies undefeated, sitting atop the SEC.
Yes, so I think we got LSU at 3-0, Texas A&M at 4-0. Is that correct? So, we got two teams doing well. Texas A&M, we know what a hard place that is to play. I've been there. They're already talking about that environment is going to be unbelievable. I think we're 110+ thousands what they've had before. I think we got two teams playing well. And remember, we talked about Elko coming in, bringing a defensive mentality to Texas A&M that had all this talent. I think their offense was a little behind early, got their quarterback back. They're starting to play better. LSU, on the other hand, same thing. The quarterback's throwing the ball well. I think 330+ yards a game passing, which puts them top 10, I think, passing in the country. But their defense is starting to play good under Coach Baker. We talked about that on three-man front on Monday. So I think we got a great matchup. I think Texas A&M's a little favored. That would probably just be playing at home.
And speaking of what you just said about LSU's defense and gradually getting better, I think that they are more equipped as far as the multitude of different offenses that they face this season. I mean, you start off with the USC offense, but we also think about had Ole Miss that rolled into Tiger Stadium having to go and try to figure out what Bobby Petrino wanted to do last week in Reynolds Razorback. So maybe that's something to keep in mind as we watch this matchup.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think their defense is coming on. I think offensively they got a quarterback. He made the plays at the end of the game. I think it's just going to be a great game, though, because I really like where Texas A&M is trending. Both of them are trending up. So we got a matchup of two good teams at Texas A&M's house.
All right, so Webb Concrete and Building Materials, Coach, and I know those guys have done a tremendous amount, not only for you, but those customers out there in the state of Alabama.
Well, I've kind of got a special place in my heart for Webb. They've just hired my son, Jacob, who played for me at UAB, graduated. He's in the Pell City office in flooring, so if you need some flooring, there's a guy to call. But Phil is such, he's such a philanthropic guy. He gives us so many different charitable organizations. Just a great company. They do concrete, as we all know, but they do building supplies and, of course, flooring, as we just mentioned.
All right. So Alabama Power brings us each and every week on this program Bill Clark's Power 5, and he kind of extends it out, kind of includes maybe a look at the college football playoff, and once again, another little shakeup at the top.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we would be talking about it. I think it's an Oregon-Georgia thing, but we're going to go with Oregon, Georgia number 2, Penn State 3, Ohio State 4, Miami 5, Texas is at 6. Not a big drop, kind of like the Oregon-Ohio State deal we went through last week. LSU and Tennessee sitting at 7 and 8. Clemson, who we've talked about, is making the move up. They're probably in really good shape as far as who they play moving forward. I brought Iowa State back in, Notre Dame 11, BYU 12, Indiana and Texas A&M hanging out. So this is pretty similar probably than most everybody else has got.
So Alabama's out of your top 14
or
15.
Yeah, they really are. This will be a good chance to look at Alabama this week, and if they can rebound against Missouri, who is, playing well and hot, maybe we can see if they make it back in.
Alabama Power brings us that segment each and every week, Coach, and talk about a philanthropic group. That group does so much in the community and around college football.
Yeah, I mean, just Alabama Power, so involved in our community and so many different charitable organizations. We're going to talk about one of our charities at the end of the day, and they're involved in so many great things for our community, giving back part of our schools and also just conservation pieces that is really important to a lot of, the sportsmen who followed your show and our show.
Donahue Chevrolet's Drive for Success, and we've talked about it a couple of times this year, Coach, because UAB played both Navy and Army, but both of the programs in the top 25 this week, and they just continue to roll.
Well, one of my favorite topics is training, and I think both of these teams are training at an elite level. And I think as more teams throw the ball and spread the ball, they compact and are really running the ball at people, and it's harder for these guys to defend because they're not seeing it. I think their training is exceptional, which is something I always prided us on at UAB, the toughness, the never giving up, the never quitting. I think you got two teams understand how to train, and they're really fit to the kind of people they have.
Yeah, and something else that I think they're mindful of, but you have to be reminded of, the things that either a defensive coordinator, especially on the defensive side of the ball, they're able to do with their group because they're so cerebral and a lot of times shoulders up as far as they don't have to worry about changing the picture right before the play and knowing that those guys are going to be in the right spot. It's almost automatic, and that's really advantageous, wouldn't you think, for a coordinator to be able to do that, especially this day and age in college football?
Let's say two things. Effort, which I think they're going to have. Tackling is a lot of effort. Getting off blocks, pursuing the football. Now what they're doing as far as schematically is next level type stuff, to your point. So I think you've got some really good students who are very, very, very coachable. And when you're very coachable, you can do more with these guys. They can disguise, they can hide, they can do all those things that you want to do to really be different.
In regards to when you watch them and you watch other programs, and I know they're different by the system and the schemes that they run, but could they break that CFP glass this year? Could they get one of those spots?
You remember, and I said this early in our year, which tells us we got a little clue about what we're doing. What we saw different out of them was a guy at the quarterback spot. I said this yesterday to somebody. Go back to Oklahoma. Y'all remember that? They're running the wishbone. The quarterback is a track star. These two guys at quarterback, now one of them at Army is not necessarily a track star, but he can run super strong, super tough. The Navy quarterback is fast.
He is.
So now what we got these guys at the helm. When they get there and they've made this read and it's one-on-one, they go. That sets up everything else, sets up the play action, sets up all these other things. So we got a guy at quarterback, not counting all these other people on the team, but they got a trigger man that can make it go on both teams.
And offensively, Navy, while they still run the traditional, what they are able to do and the multiplicity they're able to have it out of. And now they've got skill guys that can beat you on any play. And you mentioned Blake Horvath, the quarterback. Not only can he run it, but he is deadly accurate with the football.
Yeah, and here's the thing we talked about, and let's go back to those years when you'd have guys average 20-something yards a catch. We can go back to Alabama and Auburn days. It's one-on-one. It's one-on-one, and you're going to get max protection. You're going to get this one-on-one shot, and if you make a good throw, I mean, that's when you light the scoreboard up.
All right, Donahue Chevrolet, you like to drive that Tahoe on two wheels in here on the parking lot every day when you come in here.
I know, I come in here rolling in on my Tahoe. October specials, and I think, just go specifics. Up to $10,000 10K off Silverado 1500s, up to $8,000 off Silverado 2500s, and then up to $8,000 off those great Tahoes we were talking about. So these October specials, go to DonahueChevrolet.com and check these specials out. Those are great guys, and they'll definitely work with you.
Radiance Technology Defense of the Week, and you can't really argue about this one, Coach. When you only give up 38 yards and no points against the number one team in America, you got to give it to Georgia, right?
There's no doubt. 38 yards in the first half. Yeah. This was a game you could tell they'd put some time in. So let's talk about a few things that I think, if you want to go back and look at the film, things you're going to notice, and you're going to see out of Georgia a lot. There's a lot of pointing on the front and IDing, things like the split between a tight end and a tackle, saying that outside zone's coming this way. They'll change their feet. They'll raise their arm. Does that tell them that we're getting pullers? Does that say we're seeing pass? So they ID a lot of things pre-snap, which tells you they've really studied, they're well coached. A lot of people do it. I think they do an excellent job of that. Another thing, now this is kind of a pet peeve I have against these guys. as a defensive guy, stemming. So if we understand what stemming means, stem means you're lined up in one spot before the snap and you move to another spot. Okay? Perfectly.
You're talking about the defensive line.
I'm talking about the D-line.
Okay.
Could be linebackers. Really, though, we think of stemming as their front. Now, let me tell you what they did a great job
So they're
of.
set, and then all of a sudden you see them shift, and sometimes the offensive line, they will move early or something like that.
Correct. Now, they do a really good job of this. They've worked on it a lot. Now, I've done a lot of stemming in the past. The problem with stemming is when you say the snap count, something similar to a snap count, that's supposed to be called. We played Georgia. They were very good, much better than us. We had a pretty good team. 7 times with on third down. 4 of them less than 3 yards. Funny, they stemmed and happened to maybe say the word go.
Oh.
Now you can say war, you could say move, you could say anything. It's not supposed to simulate the snap count. But let me tell you what they did in this game. All kidding aside, they moved from one front to another front and blitzed them, got in and out, and they did a great job of it. But they always managed to get people to jump on third downs. And I've heard people complain about it. I complain about it. So they must be doing it right. You cannot move toward the line of scrimmage. You're supposed to be horizontal. Mine was not being able to say our snap count. I am bragging on them to say they've done a really good job with it. They're very well coached in it and how they do it.
Why was Kirby in that defense able to have so much success against Texas that they weren't able to find against Alabama in defending them?
That's a good question. I think, let's go back. Alabama did things they had not seen, especially because they had not worked against them. I think he had a better understanding of Sarkisian's offense, maybe having been at Alabama. Their study from whenever that started, they knew these guys very well. Let's just, how did they know them so well? They'd been studying them a long time. Had he changed things? Was there things in his offense that these guys knew and understood it and had studied? Now, granted, they tackle so well. Watch them in the perimeter, how they get off blocks and tackle. So you've got great coaching, the highest level of coaching with the best players. We know they got the D lineman back.
Yeah, that was big.
It's a huge deal for him because he could beat one-on-one pass protection, sometimes 2-on-1. So all those things go together, but I think they've been studying them for a long time.
So when you look at Kirby Smart and his defenses in the past since he's been a head coach, is there a common denominator? Is it the stems? Is that what you're talking about? And when you put them on, or does it change year from year depending on who they're going up against and who they're trying to defend?
I think it's everything that is really good from how they practice, which is something I always pride ourselves on, that we practice so hard. I think they practice hard. I think there's a lot of accountability. Obviously, he's got one of the number one classes. He's got a defensive mindset where he's not just trying to go get the best receivers, the best quarterbacks. He's trying to get the best defensive players. They know they're going to be coached. Then they've got a great what they study. They're very multiple. They play a lot of man coverage, which I like, with safety help. And they've got all these great things going. Oh, by the way, then they're stemming on a lot of third and shorts and finding ways to get people to jump. Oh, add that to the list of things. And as long as it's not being called, it's legal.
And, Coach, now you think about it, if you're Sark in Texas, you had put so much into this game, so much emotion. You've got to be a little bit deflated. Now you got to go on the road and take on Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
In a 28,000-seat stadium with Diego Pavia.
Yes.
That is –
Best thing ever happened to them with Vanderbilt is they beat Alabama. So their attention has already been gotten. And they're in that world. As I say, the worst thing, best thing when you lose is you've got another good team to play. You got to flip the script. You've got to say, hey, we're still wanting to play the national championship game. Oh, by the way, look what they did to Alabama.
All right, Coach, Radiance Technologies. Remember that bowl game down in Louisiana? That was a fun one.
Yeah, and we just saw Radiance Technology, just the partnership they have in that Radiance Technology Bowl at Shreveport, the Independence Bowl. They've just signed a new partnership with the AAC. And, of course, our guys at Radiance, man, they give back, and they're part of the community. They're part of our Children's Harbor game we're going to talk about here in a minute at UAB. Great supporters of that, and, of course, obviously what they do for our country.
And also Dr. Pepper, fine presenting sponsor of this show. And I know you've got a new sponsor you'd like to talk about here on the program.
Yeah, we did. The Porch Creek Indians, who were part of our Children's Harbor game last year that's been going on now. This is going to be the 8th year. We started that back in 2017. It's called Champions for Our Children. UAB, November 2nd, 2024. We're going to have a representative from Children's Harbor here next week. But thank you to the Porch Creek Indians for sponsoring those jerseys that we give to the families after the game.
It's an incredible game for sure. For all of us here at the Bill Clark Show, we hope everyone has a wonderful week, a wonderful weekend of college football. This is the Bill Clark Show presented by Dr. Pepper and Buffalo Rock here, the Bill Clark Show. See you next week.
This has been the Bill Clark Show, presented by